All right, so creating a picture book for the first time can be daunting, and that's why we made Children's Book Pro. From our years of professional experience creating children's books to help lead you through the process that you are never unsure of what you need to be doing next. When you finish the course, you'll have a book dummy that you can add to your portfolio, and you'll also have 3 finished illustrations that can also be a part of your portfolio and get you going on this path towards becoming a pro illustrator. Don't just listen to me, though. I want you to hear from people who have actually taken the course. Here's what they've said. Tammy says, no matter what stage you're in, whether a beginning illustrator or you have a few books already illustrated, this class is extremely useful. Malka says, this was a childhood dream come true. I was going over each lesson again and again. That's how much information has been stuffed into each class, enough for a lifetime. And Yolanda says, this course turned out to be one of the best investments I've made to improve my visual storytelling skills. It helped me to formulate a tangible plan to becoming the artist that I would like to be one day. Okay, so this class is running from September to November this fall. There's going to be a weekly Zoom meeting with the instructors. You can ask whatever question you want. And we also are going to set up a unique Discord community just for this next cohort of people who are taking the class. If you want to see a preview of this, you could sign up and also get a notification for when the course launches in August by visiting childrensbookpro.com. Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Will Terry. And Lee White is not here with us today because we are interviewing the wonderful, no, that doesn't do it. The amazingly talented, stunning
Steven Silver.
Steven Silver.
Yeah, Lee White's out on assignment, so he couldn't join us. He's doing something in Nashville, but we got to talk to Steven Silver, who he doesn't need an introduction, but we'll introduce him anyway. This guy is a character designer. He designed for Kim Possible. He designed for Danny Phantom in television. He worked in TV.
With a Chance of Meatballs.
Yeah, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs in Future. Just worked in character design for years out in Los Angeles, and then shifted into being like having an online teaching platform, which is the Silver Drawing Academy. Which he's currently doing now, and then transitioned into a new phase. I would call this like Act 3 of his, or Act 4 of his career, and he gets big into that. But he's now we'll let him talk about that. But I learned a lot from this episode. This episode was really about, if you are at all interested in the animation industry, having any sort of career in the animation industry, this is a must listen episode, because he breaks down, how do you break in? What qualifications do you need? How do you stay in the industry? How do you navigate this world? Do you have any takeaways? Any?
I loved hearing him talk about how to organize your portfolio, for students, because hearing it from someone who is in the industry like he is and is a recruiter and all that, you're getting the answers. It's like you get it's a take-home test rather than trying to show up and figure everything out. So I love that part.
Yeah, really good stuff. One of the key one of the key pieces of advice that he gave, and this is something that tracks with almost everybody we've talked to so far, and that is make friends. Make friends in the industry you want to work in. Yeah. Because it really is, all these industries, whether it's animation or illustration or comic books or anything, it comes down to, do people trust you? Do they know you? Are you someone who can get the job done? That's all. And they don't hire people that they don't trust, and you trust your friends. Yeah. So see what you can do to make friends.
Along with that, I have to go on a tangent just a little bit. Indulge me. When I was teaching in school, I would tell my students, take your headphones off. Take your headphones off and get to know the other students, right? Make friends out of them. because like he was saying in his interview, he didn't come right out and say it. Well, yeah, he did actually. That you know, when people get laid off, when they move to other projects and stuff, you're going to rely on your friends to basically hire you and bring you over and stuff like that. I was so amazed at how many of my students, you know, I'd say, okay, everybody pull your headphones out for a second, you know, announcement, timeout. And as soon as I was done with my little speech, which I'd make a couple times a semester, they'd put their headphones right back on. And to me, that is a sign of not being teachable. Like I'm telling you, the information that plus the teaching that happens, I'll make comments during class as they're working, and after a while, the ones with their headphones on, they just keep on working, and they wouldn't hear the teaching moments, you know. And I think that's a life lesson. You know, it's a lesson that you've got to be. Oh, he talks about it right there.
Yeah, no, that's important. So just want to draw you towards his social media account, Instagram. He is Steven Silver, and it's PH. It's STEPHEN. Steven Silver 7. That's his Instagram account. And then go to his website, stevensilver.com, and then go to silverdrawingacademy.com as well. So check out his stuff. And with that, let's talk to Steven Silver. So I wanted to ask you, Steven, just to kind of kick us off here, tell us where you're at and what you're doing right now in your, you could be as granular as you want or as broad as you want.
Okay. Recently I've kind of actually changed my whole trajectory of my career path, which is kind of very interesting. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. But really, my whole career has always been drawing, always been designing for other people, doing other things, but also teaching. So I've always been teaching too. I just felt like I always had this natural inclination to teach. When I was younger, drawing, doing caricatures, when I was 18, people were always just asking for advice. And I knew that was something that I just loved. And then when I first started teaching many years ago, it was very crazy, but like I felt like this energy and like lightning bolt strikes going off where I'm just like, I told my wife, I'm driving home, I'm like, I know what I want to do the rest of my life. And it was like teaching. I just felt this calling towards it. So right now, for the last few years, I have my online school. I opened up an online school called the Silver Drawing Academy. During the pandemic, everything changed. I was doing workshops. I was doing, doing conventions, everything. And as you guys know, that little thing happened, and and everything changed. And I was always holding off trying to do things online. I don't want to do online. It'd be so much work and such a hassle, but it was the right time. So it forced me and pushed me into that arena. But then I wanted to do something even more in my life where I love trying to help people and always have like find work somehow. Like, how can I help you get work? I've been doing it. I've found work. I've done it. But how can I help you get to that point? So I thought, what would be an interesting area in my life that I could get into that still deals with creativity and still it has to do with art, but I don't have to necessarily draw all the time, where I can help guide people. And I thought it would be awesome to be a recruiter. And so I kind of put that out in the universe and I said, I want to be a recruiter. And I was just, throwing it out there, bouncing it off the walls. And lo and behold, I am now officially a Disney art recruiter. So that's a whole new change. So now I've been looking at portfolios my whole life, and trying to help students get to that place. And so this is this whole new area. So currently, besides having my online school, I'm also an artist recruiter for Disney now.
Oh, that's cool.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I've met a few recruiters in my life. I'm curious, what is that? I didn't know that most of the recruiters I didn't know if they had an art background or not. They certainly, knew what they were looking for. But is you being an art recruiter kind of out of the norm, having such a strong background working in the industry?
Yeah, I would say extremely unnormal. The most, like you said, most recruiters you ever come across, they may have gone to art school or they may have dabbled in it, but never really had their whole career in art. So it's very unusual. And I think that's one of the reasons why they wanted to bring me in for that reason was I have all this experience. I have the eye, I can really look at portfolios and I know what I'm looking at and can help even just guide the artist and saying, listen, this is where your portfolio is currently at, but this is what you should do in order to improve. Where most recruiters, they can tell you, add more expressions, add more turnarounds, do this, but they can't necessarily, a lot of them say, if you really want to get to that next level, you just really start, observing more, but what to observe and how to look and what to introduce. And I think that was real intriguing to them in this arena to bring something special. And that's why I think it's going to be just a real great match.
Yeah, because typically, so when I worked at Blue Sky, we had our recruiter, and then we'd have all these portfolios come in, and then we ourselves the art department would have to, you 5 guys, today's your day to look at portfolios. And it was sort of taxing on the art department to stop production, spend a half a day looking at portfolios and saying, okay, we want to talk to this person, and having you as, a person who's been in an art department, who's taught people, I could see it streamlining that whole thing where it doesn't lean so heavily on the art department.
Yeah, absolutely. That's gonna play a major role because now I'm like the forefront. I'm like the front line. So before it even goes to the art department, I've already sort of looked through it and can see, these ones are really right for this position. It's maybe someone's looking for that real cartoony type of show, but this portfolio has so much action and adventure. Is that the right portfolio to really put through to these? Do they have the right sensibilities? And I know I always talk about in animation, especially, you got to be extremely versatile. The more versatile you are, you got to be that chameleon, the more opportunities you're going to have. So yes, people can have that action, adventure, and cartoon in their portfolio, but it doesn't necessarily make them great at doing the cartoony, wacky stuff that's really needed. And does that portfolio, if there's 70 portfolios, who has time to look through that, especially in the art department and on a production? So that's where the recruiting department is going to be that place, just kind of streamline it through me. And I'm an external recruiter. There's internal recruiting and external recruiting. So the internal recruiter is finding and placing the people that are already on the inside. Their jobs are coming to an end. They're moving them around. And my job is looking at from the outside to bring in.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was wondering, the advice that I give students or people, who are wanting to get into whatever industry, it's contact one of their recruiters, find them on LinkedIn, meet them at events, because their entire job is to find you. And you're making that a little bit easy. I'm wondering, from your perspective, is that good advice, or is there more specific or different advice you would give to
No, I would say that's right on. You kind of I have this philosophy that in order to make stuff happen in your life, you got to show up. You can't just sit behind and just wait for things to happen in your life. And if you're one of those artists that's gonna just show up at these events, go to gallery shows, go to conventions, just go on the LinkedIn, just keep digging. And I think a lot of people, they don't dig hard enough. They dig to that certain point, and all of a sudden they go, they'll just kind of hit the gravel, there's no oil here, and they move on. So which artist is going to be that one that's going to hit the gravel and say, you know what? Yeah, there's some rock down there and it's hard, but I'm going to keep digging and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to grab these other tools that are going to get me through that. And I think if you're willing to do that, I think there's no magic formula. There's no pixie dust or anything like that. Everyone wants that. What's the formula? Just give me some pixie dust, the snake oil, and then I'm going to, achieve this. But there just really isn't. But those are the real things to do, is just keep showing up, meeting people. I think one of the biggest ways to get jobs in this industry and I recommend too, is make friends, make connections. You know, you have to be that person that is, you got to have the courage, you got to have the confidence. You can't just live in your own little bubble. You can't just hide behind the wall. You know, you can't hide behind the internet. And I think those artists that I see have always witnessed, the ones that keep putting themselves out there. Hey, why did that happen for them? Well, because they put themselves out there. And yeah, are there those artists that exist where they're super quiet, super shy? Absolutely. But people keep getting drawn to them for their talent? Absolutely. But I think at some point you got to get yourself out there.
So I'm one of those, or let's say I'm one of those students that says I'm an introvert. I don't like meeting people. I'm really bad with other people. We get those letters all the time. Do I have to be good at meeting other people? What would you say to them?
I would say do your best. You know, it's just like do your best, and don't just write it off so quickly that, because that can always be a crutch. You know, I find myself, I have ADHD, I have dyslexia, but and I was horrible in school because of that, but I never used it as a reason why things aren't going to happen for me. And I think if you keep using these crutches as a wall, like, no, I have this and I have that, and I'm shy and I'm not confident. Well, I don't know who said it, but they can say the phrase like, well, your wish is my command. You know, it's just like you're asking the universe, well, okay, fine. You're shy, you're introverted, fine. Then that's what you're always going to have. But I would say just try. And I would also say, put yourself in situations that are uncomfortable. Maybe you're going to do an improv class. Maybe put yourself into something that forces you to do that. Or what's that? There's a great speaking, I can't remember what it's called. And you guys know, but people go and they
Toastmasters.
Like Toastmasters.
Toastmasters, that's the one. Toastmasters. You put yourself in that environment where you learn how to speak in front of people, because it is the number one fear. It's always weird to hear, like, what's the biggest fear people have in life? Public speaking. And you go, really? But it's really true. People are scared to death just to speak up and say something. Fear of rejection and all these fears that pop into their mind. Oh my God, this will happen, that will happen. And I just say, just try, see what happens. One of my favorite quotes that I always regurgitate is from Mark Twain. And he said, I've had many problems in my life, many of which have never occurred. And so we create these scenarios and these problems in our life. Oh my God, this is going to happen. That's going to happen. But hey, that actually didn't happen. That person didn't reject me. I didn't get ghosted. This thing never happened. And that's why I say, just try, see what happens. And okay, you're going to get rejected. You're going to fail. This is going to happen. But I would always encourage that. And show up, go to conventions, meet people, show up, be prepared, have questions, and Jake, I'm sure, you've seen people that have come up to your booth and they just don't know what to say, right? They just freeze in front of you. And I think it's just have some questions, know who you're going to see at the convention, and maybe just prepare some questions. So that's always going to go a long way. Yeah.
One more question on the hiring, because it's interesting to me, but I know that a lot of places hire not just based on, this kind of goes along with what we're saying, but not just based on performance or ability, but on personality. Like, when you pass people on, do you take personality into consideration? Being quiet is one thing, but having like certain personality traits that you think where that person might not get along with everyone else. Do you have to take that into consideration?
Yeah, you really do, because besides this environment we're in right now, there is going to be back to work. You're going to be in-house again, working with people, and you're working with them for 40 hours a week. And if I go to work with you for 40 hours a week, are you going to be someone that I can really work with 40 hours a week? I think that just plays a huge part. And I remember talking to a head of a studio. It was at an animation studio in Canada. And he was just telling me, we bring in new clients all the time, but it's unbelievable. We only have a select few of artists. We want to introduce them to the artists, but we only have a select few of artists that we will actually bring into the meetings, because they're well-spoken, they dress accordingly and appropriately, and we just want to put a good sort of image to what we do. And even on their level, they're just like, yeah, we kind of keep those people off to the side. They do their job, they're great, but we can't sort of like bring them out and say, hey, look, because they don't have the right sort of persona. And I think it goes a long way. And it really does. And I think, again, it's making friends and making those connections. And I think everyone just kind of wants that. They want to work with people that they feel comfortable with. And you got to, I think it's important to have that, build that skill set too. It's not just art, you can think about it like that. And again, if you want to stay introverted and be that's fine. But I do feel you can't complain why maybe things aren't happening for you if you're that sort of person and you realize that these are the roadblocks. You got to change something at some point.
We got a question recently, and it was, I don't think I'm cut out for freelance work. I'd like to get a job at a studio. Yeah. How do I know I'm cut out for studio work versus freelance work? Do you have any, what's your insight on that?
I think for someone who wants to be that freelance artist, I think it's just a matter of being organized. I think you just got to be more organized. You got to be that one you got to be willing to follow up. You got to, track people down. Hey, they haven't paid you. Are you going to be like, oh my God, they haven't paid me and I'm so scared to say something or do something? And if you don't have that sort of mentality that you're willing to just follow up and be more organized on that level, I think maybe being in-house in the studio staff position is better. Then you just sort of show up, collect your paycheck at the end of the week. You don't have to talk to people on the phone. You're not, it is a whole different sort of beast. And I think you got to be just willing just to be open. Hey, talk about pricing, talk about deadlines, talk about scheduling, and just be aggressive in ways and just always looking, when you're a freelance artist. Sure, there can be those times when you get established where the work's coming, people are familiar with who you are, and you're going to keep getting those offers. And then you want to work out the deals, and you're working out separate contract deals all the time, multiple things. Do you want to read through all the NDAs every time? Do you want to deal with the contracts all the time? Are you that sort of person? I think that's important. There was one of my favorite authors or philosophers is a guy by the name of Napoleon Hill. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's written many books on the law of success, and just I got it just right here. It's this big giant book like that big. But he talks about in life, there's like there's the janitor and there's the salesperson, right? And sometimes the salesperson is thrown into a janitor sort of job, and they're unfulfilled, and it doesn't work for them because there's so much more. There's so much more to them than just being the janitor. They need to get out and talk to people and hustle and be like this. And then you get the janitors who are thrown into the salesman's job, who this is the most uncomfortable thing in the world for them. They don't belong. I just want to clean up. I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to. And I think that's what you kind of got to decide in life. Not that it's a life sentence. You can always change what you want to be. But I think you got to determine for yourself, am I that sort of person who's willing to, be more outspoken, or am I, quiet and I just want to sit and do my own thing? So decide that. Don't put yourself in an environment that goes against who you truly are.
Okay, so we've talked about like personality traits, openness versus, more introverted. Portfolio-wise or skill-wise, how do you know you're cut out to work at a studio? And I should ask too, like you're more on the feature side right now, correct? Or is it more television?
I'm on the TV, I'm in charge. Yeah, television animation.
Okay, so can you speak to the difference between feature and TV and what you look for in a portfolio, and even what the difference between those kind of jobs are?
Yeah, so with I think the most important thing is there's not really a huge difference in. Let's just maybe say storyboard. So there's a lot of different positions in animation, and for those who are maybe unfamiliar, you're talking about a BG designer, background designer, storyboard artist. You got your animator, character designer, prop designer. So there's a lot of different positions. Let's just say like storyboards. So feature storyboards can be a lot more loose. you don't have to worry about putting things on model. It's all about the action. It's about the feeling. It's about the timing. It's about the comedy. It's whatever it may be, but you don't have to worry about putting things on model. Where television animation, a lot of the studios will require more of that, to where they still want those aspects, but you got to just be a little bit more tighter. You're worrying more about your backgrounds and and everything else, and you're really thinking about every aspect. Where feature, I can just draw the character. I don't have to worry about what the background's going on. I'm just going to throw it in there, draw very loose. It's very you got more time, right, on a feature. Where television, there's a lot more of a crunch. So that there's a big difference there. But in say character design, what I do, I wouldn't say there's such a huge difference as much as maybe on feature. You definitely want to be more of that storyteller in your designs and really show just a lot more life and energy to your characters. Television animation, once again, I got to just show I can just do a standard front 3/4 view. I got to worry about doing mouth charts. I got to worry about doing the expressions and everything else. So and plus I got a shorter time. You may only have 2 weeks to design a show. So speed is going to be something on the television side you really want to look at. Are you fast? Can you do it? Can you handle that sort of particular pressure, where feature is going to be a lot different?
And does that come down to, really quick, essentially all feature now is 3D animation.
Yeah.
And TV is still a lot 2D animation. And is it the feature storyboard, it's all going to be done in layout, 3D layout anyway, so it doesn't matter what my drawings look like. Right. And for 2D animation, it's going to be animated based on this storyboard, so it better be on model and
exactly.
The pose is really solid.
Exactly. Yeah, it better be tight, just to really see. And that's where you have the storyboard and just layout departments. When you look at like The Simpsons, they're pretty much almost just animating, and doing a tight job on themselves, just to make sure that it really comes through. And if you don't have you want to make sure you have the acting and the emotion, anything else that's needed. But if you don't have the characters maybe really thought out, overseas where all the animation is done, right, where feature, the animation's mainly done in-house at the studios for TV, we're sending it to Korea, the Philippines, India, Mexico. It's going everywhere. And they don't always have the sensibilities or even the teams with the skill set. So you want to provide them with as much information as possible. And the tighter you can get. And some shows are tighter than others. Some of them you don't have to be so on model, but get close. That's a big thing. Yeah.
Hey, so for the children's book people here, describe what's on model.
Oh, yeah. So
I mean, a lot of our people know, but that's a term that a lot of people don't understand. So yeah.
Sure. So on model is just making sure, let's just say I have Scooby-Doo and I got my beautiful drawing of my Scooby-Doo and I got my turnaround of Scooby-Doo, which means I got my front view of him, my side view, my back 3/4, my front 3/4, just a nice lineup. And now I just got to make sure when I'm drawing that character on the boards that every time I draw that character, that it looks exactly like Scooby-Doo, that the proportions aren't so crazy where now Scooby-Doo looks like a donkey, or something.
Donkey-Doo.
Yeah. So, the same thing you do as a children's book illustrator. I think every page you do, you just want to make sure that your character is consistent, that they're on model, they look the same. So by page 7, you're just like, well, his eyes are so far apart now. That looks weird. On all the other pages, the eyes were close. So just be careful with that.
Yeah.
So here's another question. Do you need to live in LA to work in this industry?
No. Well, things definitely changed during the pandemic. And I think I would say before the pandemic, it was you could be a freelance artist. So there were a lot of artists doing work just on a freelance basis, on a daily call basis. But really, yeah, they kind of wanted you in-house. And if you didn't live in LA, if you're even from another country, they would get a visa, they'll figure that out. They'll bring you into the studios. During the pandemic, the animation industry was the only industry that didn't really get shut down, in its big entertainment world, right? And all the live actions, everything got shut down. Animation was thriving. So the studios have realized, wow, we can really function with all these artists all over the place. We don't need the butts in the seats in order to make it work, where that was a belief that all of a sudden that belief sort of vanished during all this. But now I think they're going to start integrating that just a little bit more, where they're going to have you come in, but also work remote as well. But you don't have to go in as many days. Maybe you'll go in 1 or 2 days a week. But it's important. And I think the thing that is missing, unfortunately, because animation is a very collaborative medium, right? No one can, you don't do it alone. And ideas where comics and children's books, that can be, you can work in your studio and do it on your own. You don't need all these people around you and all these things and checking all the time. And I think the importance of being in-house is you miss out on the sort of water cooler talk, so to speak, where just ideas are thrown around. Hey, hey, Jake, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if we just sort of like blah, 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 and that scene? Yeah, that'd be awesome. And then, 2-second conversation and you're gone, where you're not going to get that on Zoom. I don't feel like you can, people aren't just bantering back and forth as much as when you're in person. Right. So having that in-house it really helps, in creativity.
Right. We could see that maybe play out in a few years as these productions that were made in COVID are coming out, and if there is a difference in the feel of them. Yeah, for sure. So how would you describe the state of the industry right now, as far as, I guess, the health of it? I know there's negotiations for the animation. Is it Animation Guild?
Yeah, the Animation Guild, our union. Yeah,
the union. So can you just go into that a little bit and kind of explain to people, because our audience here is primarily illustrators. We do have people who are like, oh, maybe animation's a thing. We have some people who are in the entertainment industry, but it just be good to have like a broad overview on the state of the industry, on a TV level, and if you have insight on a feature level as well, that'd be cool too.
Yeah, I would say the state of the industry it's just really booming. There's just, as long as there's kids on this planet, you're never not going to have animation. And it really is, so it's just opened up so much now because of Netflix, because of Disney Plus, because of Hulu, because of Apple, and it's opened up this whole other market which didn't exist before. So 15 years ago or so, 10 years ago, it wasn't there, but now they're and because of binge watching has changed the industry, because where we just maybe do about you might even start off with 6 episodes of something and you'd spread that out and then you'd repeat it. Now, people are done watching 20 episodes in one day. It's just like, okay, what's next? What's more? And there's a thirst for it and a hunger for it. So the industry is just booming. There's constant productions being created and a lot of hiring going on. And where there's union studios and non-union studios. So the union studios are what you'd expect, like the big boys, and that's Disney, Warner Brothers, Cartoon Network, Sony, and these union and others. And there's these union the union is what in the States we have right now. It doesn't exist in Europe. It's not happening in Canada. They're trying to build them. We're trying to get more union studios, and what the union studio can do for us is it's just building camaraderie and a connection, just making us sort of like one, where when you become a union artist, you'll get your health benefits. If you work at a union studio, you sort of have your minimum pay rate and your minimum pay raises. And there's more protections, that we're getting. There's about 6,000 strong current union guild members in the industry, again, and in California. really. And it's really just growing. I think we're expanding some different in New York. There's some studios that are going union, and it's just growing because people want that protection and that guarantee. I'm just trying to think what else you kind of asked in relation to that.
So what studios aren't union?
Yeah, what studios aren't union? Let me think. I'm been used to so long working for Anna Union Studios. There was a studio. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Is You didn't mention Nickelodeon.
Oh yeah, Nickelodeon. Sorry. So Nickelodeon
Okay.
is union. Yeah, Warner Brothers is union. Nickelodeon, Cartoon.
Pixar?
Pixar is not union. Pixar is not union. And that's where a lot of people, there's back and forth on that. Whether there's the artists that want the union and there's the artists that don't. And Pixar will, they'll give them their health plan and do different things. But I think they should be, with all due respect. I think they should be for what they do and being associated with Disney. I think it's an important thing to have them as a union, and plus it would bump up their pay. A lot of Pixar artists, they don't make the money that some of the union artists, are making, even though they're doing these huge films. But again, it's the lure of Pixar. Ooh, I want to be at Pixar, and they'll do that, and people are willing not to do it. But in my opinion, I think Pixar should absolutely be a union studio, especially since it's tied in with all these other big studios, and I think a lot of artists would appreciate it.
This is fascinating because I've never talked to someone about these kinds of things that's been in animation. One of the questions that I've always had was, what happens when you do get laid off if you're union? Do you continue on with your health care for a while? How does that work?
Yeah. So and that's another thing with a union studio, you can't just fire someone straight away. There's got to be, there's almost like you got to go, there's about 3 different warnings. You go through the first warning. Hey, listen, this isn't working out right now. You better shape up or get your stuff together. Okay. You've been given your warning. So you can't just get rid of someone straight away. So it's a lot harder. But when you do get laid off, pretty much how it works is you're going to get your benefits. Like it works, I believe, on like a 6 month to 6 month basis. So you could be covered for maybe, I know when I left my union studio, when I first left, I was covered still for about another 6 months. And then I had to go onto another health program. And you bank, and they have what they call banking hours. So when you're at a union studio, what you're doing is you're accruing these hours and banking these hours that eventually will go into your pension and your health benefits. And they have one of the best health plans. We got the same health plan as all the actors and everything else. And it's a really amazing health plan. And that's one of the best parts about the union is the health benefits. It's like when I had my 2 kids, there's no hospital, you're not paying for anything when they're going into the hospital for anything. So it's great. And then the pension at the end. So if you get vested, so if you've worked, I believe I think it was 15 years, but you could be fully vested 20 years in. And once you get vested, once you turn 65, so even if I leave the animation industry when I'm 50 and I never work another union job, but I've been vested, when I turn 65, I'll get health benefits for the rest of my life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you're sort of like covered on that front, which is really great. So that's, again, just a great bonus through there. And then we have, just training. There'll be different training, but do they place you on other shows? That's the one thing where I feel like the union personally needs to do a little bit better on our union. I know there's other unions out there. They could be the metal workers union or the different
Teamsters
where if you're laid off, they're going to put you through first. You're a union member. We're going to you've paid your dues all these years. We're going to give you just priority on this list and put your name in front of all these other hiring entities. I think we could do a better job with that for the animation union, because there's no real system. We throw out different, hey, there's a new job opening, Disney's hiring, Nickelodeon's hiring, so you'll get that in your email. But I think just for us to put union members in front of these union studios, because you have to be union anyway. You can't work at Disney or Nickelodeon or any of these other studios, if you don't have to be a union member. You'll join once you get hired. But if you're a union member, but you can't work at those studios and not be union.
Yeah. So what I've heard of, some of my students and some colleagues have gotten hired on at different places, and they said it was like a temporary thing. So they weren't hired on. Is that a common thing where you kind of get a testing period before you become a union employee?
Yeah. You'll, sometimes they might even just bring you on as a freelance for a little bit in the beginning. And so you don't have to be necessarily union at that point, because you might be a daily call. You might just be working for one day at a time, or they might say, hey, this is a short project. And at that point, they'll determine if you work out. But sometimes, a lot of the times, they'll hire you just based off your portfolio, right? So the first line of defense in getting hired in this industry is you got to have the right portfolio. You got to have the portfolio that represents the position that you want to get into. It's not necessarily with these bigger studios, a jack of all trades. You don't really want to be that. They're looking for that prop designer. They're looking for that background designer. They're looking for the character designer. So you want to be the best in that. The only thing is that you want to make sure that you're versatile within that. I can draw preschool type shows. I can do action adventure type shows. I can do all these different genres and show that. And then once they see your portfolio and they go, okay, you got a great portfolio. This show is looking for this specific artist. I'm going to put you in front of that, the showrunner, the producer, the director. They make their decision if they want to hire you. Sometimes if you've had enough experience and they know you won't get tested. Otherwise, they will test you, and they want to test you just to see if you can match the show style, if what your sensibility is. And then if they like what you've done, then they'll make you the offer and then bring you on. But it's a very nomadic life. And what I mean is, when you work in the studios, unless you're on The Simpsons, where it's just like going on and on and on.
30 years,
you're hop, skipping, and jumping from one production to the next. And that's why, again, it's important to make friends and make the connections and keep your ears and eyes open all the time. Hey, I hear they're looking for a character designer on this show. And that's how I got into Disney. I was at Warner Brothers working on a show there. And my friend said, hey, they're looking for a character designer for Clerks, the animated series that Kevin Smith's doing. This was back in '99. You should apply. And it's just through that connection. And he put me in contact with the guy he knew at Disney. And then boom, it goes, one thing leads to another. And then I was tested and they liked what I did. And then that's where they make you a staff employee at that point. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm curious. The question that's been on my mind a lot lately is, what role in this does social media play? Do you have to have a presence in order to get a job? Is it a waste of time? Is it something that you should focus on, like uploading TikToks of your animation work or whatever? Like, does that matter, or is it, in your experience or in what people you've worked with moved the needle at all?
I think it really makes a difference. You have to be, again, out of sight, out of mind. And I think you just got to keep putting yourself out there. I know at Titmouse, I was talking to one of the people who are running the studio there. I say, how do you find all your animators? And he said, believe it or not, we find them on like Vimeo and YouTube. They're posting their own animations that they're doing. And we can see that they got the skill. But absolutely, you want to put yourself out there and show what it is that you're doing, because that's recruiters are looking through LinkedIn and Instagram and seeing if you have the sensibility. So you want to make sure that when you are posting on your social media, that you're posting stuff that's relevant to the job that you really want. So don't be showing what you ate for dinner last night. That can be another account, that you want
right.
to. Just, again, having that professional attitude. And not only will, say, recruiters, that's how they're finding you and looking and saying, oh, look at this skill set. I think, and then they're going to dive into your website, right? So make sure that you have a link in your profile that drives people to your website so people can see a little bit more about you on there, and they can get your email because now they want to reach out to you. And then you might just even find just people who want to hire you to do commissions, right? Who just other artists hiring other artists. And if you don't have that presence, I think you're just missing out. There's always that, do you need to be posting every day and doing all this? I don't know. I think just as long as you're somewhat consistent, we're all trying to just build a following and build that awareness. We're trying to build our own exposure. And I think that's very important in this industry, is that it's up to you to build your own exposure. Don't let those people, and there's many of them, those scoundrels out there who will try to take advantage of you and try to say, do this for this, this will be the best exposure you can have, do this for free, blah, blah, blah. And then it moves into this whole needle, which I don't support. And I feel like but it is important to have, be active. Absolutely.
Okay. When I taught at UVU, taught illustration, I would start out my classes a lot of times and I would say, here are the top 5 or 10 things that you guys might do that'll make me think you're not going to make it, right? These are common things that you're going to do that are assigned to me that you're not serious or you're not preparing yourself. So that question could be asked either way. What are the top, 5 things you see students do where you go, ooh, that person's going to make it? Or what are the top 5 things you think for an animator? You look at that person and you go, they got to change that.
Yeah. I think, things that you have to do is, again, making sure that you have that portfolio is not just a single type of style in there. I think that can really eliminate your potential opportunities. If I'm just showing one look, hey, if I'm not doing that show style, I'm not even going to test you. We're not even going to give you that opportunity because, we're trying to do Scooby-Doo and all I see is SpongeBob sort of work. It doesn't work together. So those are things that I would say, again, the versatility, make sure that you're doing that. Other things to do is, we kind of sort of discussed it, just make sure that you are active on social media, make sure that you're showing up to events. I think that those are big, important things. I think things not to do necessarily are, don't just have, don't, what I see, this is an analogy I like to use, which I see in a lot of portfolios, which is what not to do. Where could you imagine going to a restaurant, your favorite restaurant, and all of a sudden you open up the menu and you see the hors d'oeuvres and the main course and the desserts and the drinks all blended together. Just 1 minute I'm looking at it, just says my steak, and then it just has my fish, and then all of a sudden the drink, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'm looking at. It's all blended together. And don't do that, because I see a lot of portfolios where people they got their character design, and then the next thing is the props, and then they do a background, and then it's character design again, and then a prop, and then this one's color, and there's no organization. And so what you want to do is just categorize it like a menu. You can do multiple things, but I want my character design, list that. Let me click on that, and it takes me just to my character designs. It says I do prop designs. Let me click on the props. Now it just shows me that. And if you just kind of keep it nice and clean and clear is important. I would say something else not to do portfolio website related, which a lot of students make the mistake of, in my opinion, is number one, whether if they go into school, they're using a school account, as their website, where it has all this other school information. And I would say build your own. Don't go on, use their platform, because you can easily look at other people's artwork, or people are sharing, they send their portfolio and it's an ArtStation account. Now, ArtStation is awesome. And there's so much talent and so much great thing, but that's the problem. If you just send me your ArtStation and I'm looking for a character designer, all of a sudden, oh, look at that character designer over there. Click, let me look at that person. So you've just put yourself in with all the other competition, right? So as opposed to just having your own little entity and your own website, and just keep things very Simple is just better. And I think when people just get too busy with everything, just don't do that. So I say don't do those things. I mean, what are things that you say like not to do or to do?
Well, there are students that just don't seem like they enjoy working, so they haven't invested the time. That's one thing I see a lot.
If you're not getting excited about this assignment, you're probably not going to make it in in this industry.
Yeah. That and I mean, I'm sure that you see portfolios all over the place, but I mean, there are definitely some where when you get to the first page, you're probably going, this person doesn't have enough time in.
Yes.
Their drawing is just not to a level yet. So, maybe I'd ask, where would you say, if someone was going to look at a really good portfolio to say, oh, I need to get to that level, where would they look? Would they go like on ArtStation or something like that? Or
I would say, yeah, I mean, yes, definitely. That's one of the areas, but I also just kind of want to say, just building off of what you were saying, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making, people love to just get to the finish, right? And where they're just polishing a turd. You know what I'm saying? They don't, like you said, put in the work. There's no construction. There's no feeling. There's no energy. There's no story. There's just nothing there. But oh my God, the rendering. I just want to get to the finish. I just want to put the cherry on top and put the icing on the cake, but I haven't even put all the other ingredients in it. Or I'm getting my furniture for my house, but I haven't even built the foundation. I haven't even built the house yet. I have no structure. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things that I see in portfolios that's missing a lot, is they don't have that, all those things, the construction, the feeling, all those. And I think artists just need to find their heroes, the people that really inspire them. And I would also say, stop showing your artwork I stopped showing my artwork to my parents when I was like 18, because they kept telling me how great everything was. Oh, you're so wonderful. You're so amazing. It's just like, I don't want to hear that. So make sure you're showing it to the right people to get feedback on that. And, but sometimes people can't tell what's good artwork, especially if they're not trained enough, right? How do I know is that really good or it's not good? But I think it is a tough call, but you kind of know. I think you get the fundamentals, learn the fundamentals, stop trying to skip them, stop trying to breeze through them. And once you do that, then you can almost move into multiple avenues in your life. And that's what I try to encourage young artists. I say, maybe you don't know that you want to be a mural painter, or you don't know if you want to be a comic book artist or a children's book illustrator, an animator, but I can guarantee you one thing. If you just really focus right now on just learning how to draw, and you learn how to observe, and you take figure drawing, and you're always observing, you're always sketching, you're filling up those sketchbooks, when that time comes and that opportunity arises, you're more likely to be prepared just to say yes, even though you've never done that job before. Like all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, I've never been a children's book illustrator, but this opportunity came, I'm just going to say yes and do it. And all of a sudden, before you know it, your whole career path starts and you go, wow, how did that happen? And it's all about, once again, the Boy Scout motto, just be prepared, which is going to go a long way.
Yeah.
So I want to ask about education too. Does someone need to go to art school to get into this industry, or is there a better way to do it?
No, absolutely not. You don't. And I would say the majority of artists that I know, even in the industry, never went to art school. I never went to art school. Your portfolio is your diploma. It is your degree. It's everything. And it doesn't need to be written that you went to this 4-year college to do that. I think there can be an advantage to go into a 4-year school, because you can meet people, you can make friends, connections, you can get internships. There's different things that you can really learn about. And maybe you're not a self-motivator and you need that teacher and you need those assignments and you need that structure. So that can be helpful too. But do you need it to break in and get in? Absolutely not. It's going to be just your pure dedication and your pure skill set. And this is why I think the online schooling has revolutionized just training, especially individual artists. Us as teachers can at any moment someone go, I want to learn character design. Well, why do I need to pay $30,000 to go, or $60,000 to go to a school where now I'm being bounced around in all these academic classes, and I don't get enough time, and I got to study 3D animation, and I got to do storyboards, but I don't want to do that. I just want to be a character designer. And now you can go, who do I know that is a character designer that I can learn from? Oh, that guy, he teaches character design. He can teach me everything he knows. So if you can go right to the source, that's the best thing to do. And I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and he always quotes with this guy, his teacher, and what the quote was, success leaves clues, so, and you're following that. Success leaves, so finding that person that's successful in what you want to get into, most likely has left a lot of clues on how to get there. So it's up to you to start finding that person and saying, yeah, I just want to go in, and you go in hard, you go in strong, and you end up just getting to that level that you need to be without taking all these other classes that don't necessarily interest you and just burn you out. A lot of times I've met so many art students, I'm sure you have too, going to 4-year school, they're just burnt out. Yeah. And, it's preparation, hey, you're going to get burnt out in the studio as well, in the system. You're going to get burnt out working with specific clients. But I think, just try now today, just find your person, find your people, and just learn from that. And I think also the internet can be so overwhelming, right? I know with all of us, we can say growing up, we had a limited amount of our heroes, right? There may be about 10 of them, right? I got like Mad Magazine, and I got this, but I got that. And these are the things that I'm learning from. I'm going to practice drawing from Mort Drucker and Jack Davis, and I'm going to practice, drawing from some Norman Rockwell here, whatever it is. You're doing those things, and you kind of pick and choose, and it all becomes you. Then you come out of it. Today, with Pinterest, with ArtStation, with Insta, there's so much stuff out there. Sometimes you don't even know where to look. And people have 50 billion different artists, and a lot of the stuff's blending together. I remember just like with Mary Blair, who's a very famous artist, who you know her. She sort of like designed It's a Small World, but she was a great painter. And everyone's Cinderella. Mary Blair, it's like, well, it's all carbon copy of everyone. So there's no individuality. So be careful, make sure you're not just honing in on that one person, so that you're not a clone of that person. But again, find your influences, but again, just be careful not to get so overwhelmed that, there's 50 billion choices out there, and yeah.
So we talked about how you break in, we talked about what the job is. How do you stay in? How do you get to that vested 20-year mark? When you look at this industry, it can chew people up and spit them out. And there's a lot of people who, I see these YouTube videos like, Disney wasn't my dream. I thought it was going to be this, and now I'm gone. And what does it take to stay in this industry?
I would say just be good, keep learning. And again, make friends, just make those connections. And that's how you sort of really stay in it, because there's no other real secret to it. Because that way your friends sort of will carry you through on different jobs. They hear things, and then they let you know, and that's how you stay in. And I'd say be professional. Make sure you're not that person that keeps missing deadlines. You don't want to miss deadlines. You got to be easy to work with. I think what happens is, with, unfortunately, a lot of us older guys, as you start to get 50 and older, you're looked at sometimes where you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And the older person comes in, it's just like, well, I got to learn this program. I got to do that, and as you're starting just to be a little bit of a curmudgeon, back in my day, I've been doing this forever. So you don't want to be that person. You want to be the person that's just like, open, teachable. And I think as long as you stay teachable and stay humble, you're going to keep getting the work, and people are going to say, I love working with that guy, instead of like, oh, don't work with that person. There's some people in the industry who are, I sometimes at dinner with a good buddy of mine last night, and, very successful director, and talking to him, and we were just brought up a couple names, and I go, God, I don't know how that person's still even working in the industry, but they're on different projects, but people aren't familiar with them. They don't know, they haven't heard of the reputation.
They haven't worn out their welcome there yet.
Right, exactly. Haven't worn out the welcome yet, but it's just like, there are some of those people that just like, oh my word, man, how is it possible that they are even getting those jobs? And a lot of times they're not, and you always see them, hey, any job, they're posting on LinkedIn, they're posting on Instagram, I'm available for work, and constantly putting themselves out there that they're available every minute, because people aren't referring them, because they're like, you are a pain in the ass, man, to work with. I don't want to work with you again.
Right. Yeah. As far as in-person events, you mentioned galleries, gallery shows. So I assume, in LA, there's lots of, there might be a group show, and all the artists that participate that are going to be in there. Yeah. It's a good way to meet them. I assume that paused for a while because of COVID. Yeah. I assume it's coming back now. Yeah. There are also like events. We had CTN, we have Lightbox. Is there anything besides those as well? Like would you go to a WonderCon or a Anime Con or something like that? Is that worth the time and the investment to go to one of those places?
I would say absolutely yes, because recruiters are showing up there too. I was recently at WonderCon, and I'm going there. I had a booth there, but I'm also was going in with my eyes as a recruiter, and I'm walking down Artist Alley, and I'm grabbing people's cards and talking to them if I think that, well, this person, I think that'd be awesome. That their painting, their background, the way they color is awesome. Next time a background painter position comes up, they may be considered, right? They might get thrown in that pool. So I would absolutely say, put yourself out there. Again, show up at these conventions, but also make sure that if you're there and you say, I want to get into the animation industry, you're not necessarily going to go there and set up your comic booth and you're just showing all your comics and everything, because that will get overlooked, because we're not doing that, in animation. But if you're there and I can see on your splashboard behind you that there's an animation sensibility, like, they may never worked in animation. They're selling their own pins and they're selling their own things and like that, and their own, prints. But I see that sensibility, even though they've never been in the industry, they could potentially, work as well. But absolutely, I would say, once again, show up. And you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know what freelance work you may get from someone else. You don't know who's going to show up at your booth. And it's not even, it could be, I remember I was at in San Diego Comic-Con, and this young guy approached me, and he was just starts talking to me, and before you know it, it's like, can I hire you just to do some character design work for me? And like, got talking to him. Ends up being that like his family owns one of the largest farmers markets, in the Midwest, and they wanted a mascot, design. So it turned into this huge job, that came of just it doesn't have to be a studio person. Again, you just don't know who's walking around there. And one of my good friends, Mitchell Bernal, do you know Mitchell? He designed, he created the skull animals, where there were these black silhouettes of like a cat or a dog, and there was a little cute skull on the inside. And he was there at Comic-Con, and someone in licensing approached him, said, this is really cool. He made his own little book, his own little children's book with his son, and he was selling that, and they saw that and were just like, hey, I think this could be something. Got talking to them, and it turned into a multi-million-dollar licensing deal. They were in Target. They were just sort of everywhere. And it's short-lived. It was going on for about maybe 5-6 years. But again, came out of him just creating his own children's book, putting it out there and turning it into something. And that's why, again, I say, just show up, go to these places. You don't know who you're going to meet, when or why. So absolutely do it.
That's really good. Yeah.
Before we started talking, I had some of your work up, And my wife came in. My wife Lily comes in, and she's like, "Oh, Kim Possible." Do you want to talk about some of the stuff that you've worked on at all?
Sure. Yeah, when I came into animation, I was hired back in 1997, and this was about showing up. I showed up to this, and I was living in San Diego, and I showed up to this meeting once a month, and it was called the Southern California Cartoonist Society. And every month they had a new cartoonist, whether they were a children's book illustrator, comic strip artist, an animator. And they had an animator. He was a storyboard artist on a show called Freakazoid back at Warner Brothers. And I would take my portfolio, even though it wasn't good, it wasn't great by any means. I was young, but I was eager, and I showed up with my portfolio every single place I went. Physical portfolio, not on my phone, and there was no phone, right? A little beeper.
What year was this?
This was back in 1995, 1996. And I showed up and I showed him my portfolio, and he said, "Hey, stay in touch. You're not great, but keep in touch." And it was about a year later that I built up the confidence, and I met with him, and he took me upstairs, gave them my portfolio, and they ended up hiring me on a show called Hysteria. And that was very caricature heavy. And that was all in my portfolio, because I got my background doing caricatures in theme parks. That's where I was trained myself to be an artist. And from there, I went on to I did a couple of other things there, but then I was hired by Disney for my first job to design for Kevin Smith, Clerks, the animated series. So that's when I got my introduction into Disney and came in onto that show. And then after that, again, in-house recruitment was like, that show ended, needed to move me onto something else. So they moved me onto a show called Weekenders, Disney's Weekenders. Again, you got to be a chameleon, work in multiple different styles, hop, skipping, and jumping. Mm-hmm. And while I was on that show, my director that I worked with on Clerks said, "Hey, we're doing a new show, and we just want we want to see what you come up with, what design sensibility you have." And that was Kim Possible. And then they loved what I was doing and providing them the artwork I was showing them. So then they pulled me off of Weekenders and brought me on full time to design all the characters on Kim Possible. And then from there, kind of hop, skip, jumping around, I ended up leaving that studio and got hired to design Danny Phantom at Nickelodeon. So they were doing the creator of the show, Butch Hartman, they were doing Fairly Odd Parents, but he had pitched this new show and he was looking for a designer for that. Came in, tested me, liked what I was doing, and that's what got me hired onto Danny Phantom. And then I left Danny Phantom and went over to Sony Feature for about a year and did development on Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Worked over there. And in between, I'd even just do different things. Like I did development for the commercials for who was the studio that was doing it, the Charmin Bear, the CG version that you see on TV right now. So you're doing development, things like that. If people aren't familiar with those other shows, there's been so many shows that I've worked on. Those are like the big ones that I worked on in my career, and that's what it's always been. And about 14 years ago, though, I stopped. Maybe 15 years ago, I stopped working in-house because I wanted to watch my kids grow up. I was working at the studios, and I thought, God, I just want to be at home and see if I can make it as just do a freelance artist and still work for the studios. And so that all worked out, and my kids are grown up now. And so that was cool. And then I just started, my own school, my own academy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you ever work with Tom Richmond?
I did. Yeah, I worked with Tom Richmond doing characters in Minnesota. So actually, funny story with that. I was hired. I was working at SeaWorld in San Diego, and the people that I worked with, they had just opened a brand new booth. They were from Minnesota, opened up the Mall of America, right? It had just opened out there, and they had a caricature booth. So I went out there to work for them. And during the wintertime, Tom Richmond, this was before he was doing Mad or anything else like that. He had all his own concessions. He was just drawing at the shopping mall, like I was doing too. November, December, I would draw at the shopping malls and make a good buck, doing gifts for people and all that. And that's where I met him. And I would stand behind him and watch him draw. And he just kind of like, who the hell is this young kid? Just like, he's here almost every day on my day off. I was there because I was just so hungry to learn. I learned from the guys that trained me, but I'm looking at him. And then we just got talking, and then he offered me a job to work at the Valley Fair in Minnesota. And I went out there, and so I did that for a couple of summers doing that. So, yeah, that was cool.
That's cool. We interviewed him a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
it hasn't gone live yet, but
okay.
Well, nice. By the time people listening, they can go back and hear that one. I always got to remember the context in which that's we're recording these.
It's a fun coincidence to find out that you worked with him, because he went through that whole thing about how he was hiring other artists and how he, we talked to him about that. So it's kind of fun to.
Yeah.
He told us he had 100 artists at one time working for him.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Because he had his different theme parks, and that's how those guys operated. He probably told you about how he got started with this group called Fuzzen Arts, and they had concessions in Vegas and all these other places and theme parks all around the country. And he was one of their artists amongst the hundreds of artists that was trained by them and started his own. And that's what a lot of the caricature artists did. They learned the ropes, and then they set up their own concessions at different theme parks. Yeah. Yeah.
What were you going to say, Will? Sorry.
No, just the coincidence it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I am curious, do you have any dream projects that you've kind of got, out there somewhere that just someday type of project that you'd like to work on? Is there any kind of thing like that?
There isn't. There really isn't. I feel like I've kind of done all the stuff that I wanted to really do in my life and enjoyed every moment of it. And more now, I realize that my purpose in life was shifting, that my true calling in life wasn't just to be an artist and an illustrator, but to be a teacher. And that's how that sort of calling and purpose has transitioned into me opening up my own school, but also being a recruiter. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm just kind of in this phase of just seeing where the wind takes me. And, but yeah, I don't really have, I got to draw for Mad Magazine for 2 years. I was that was one of my big ambitions, like, wow, to be a Mad Magazine artist. And I got that experience for about 2 years in several of their magazines, and also being able to, my hero was Mort Drucker, and I was very fortunate to become really good friends with him, and he let me film a documentary of him. Is the only documentary that exists, of him. And I was able to film this, and that the fact that he got to see, and he called me, when he saw that I was in Mad Magazine, and having that connection, and just, it was such an honor at that. But that was my big thing, like, wow, to be Mad Magazine and to do it while Mort Drucker was alive, and for him to see it was even more special. Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, man, this is so informative. I think we'll wrap it up there. But just thank you so much for joining us and giving an hour of your time here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invite.
I think we should make sure that the students that are listening that want to go into animation or want to learn more, you've got a great YouTube channel where you do art talks, and I've been watching your art talks for a long time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, but yeah, some really good information where they can find you and even take your classes and stuff. So
thank you.
Any last thing you want to say, or are you good?
No, I just want to say, just follow your gut, follow your gut, or you'll be in a rut. Just, just do the things that you want to do. Just don't worry about what other people are going to say about you, think about you, tell you. I think the best thing you can do is just follow that. Don't try to plan and figure out your whole future. It's not written yet. You don't know what's coming down the pipeline. You don't know who you're going to meet, what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. And I think as long as you just stay passionate and active, just doing what it is that you love to do, something's going to happen. But be willing to put in the time, be willing to put in the work, and just enjoy this journey. And most importantly, have fun.
All right. That was a good discussion. I really like talking to Steven Silver. Again, we talked about some of our takeaways at the beginning, but what was really cool about him is, this obviously, very obviously, if you've watched any of his YouTube videos, met him in person ever, or even go to his Instagram account, this is a guy who cares about others and cares about this industry. And he really does want to help people. You
can tell he's got a giving attitude.
Yeah.
The first time I met him at CTNX, I could tell that.
Yeah.
But there are, I mean, with teachers, his lifelong passion is teaching. And working with artists and helping them become successful. He mentioned he's a fan of Tony Robbins, so he's got that kind of abundance mindset, that positive mental attitude. And I, if I were going into animation, I would definitely want to take classes from him.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Again, you can go to his Instagram account. It's Steven Silver 7, and that's a PH Steven, not a V Steven, and stevensilver.com, and also check out silverdrawingacademy.com, where he's teaching classes specifically on character design. And if you want to learn from an industry professional like him who has the accolades and the experience, I don't think you can do better than going there as well. All right, that's it for us. 3 Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. And if you're not signed up for our foundations course, our foundations track on SVSLearn.com, why not? I'm just curious.
Yeah, why not?
Either you're already experienced and you don't need it, or you aren't experienced enough and you do need it. So if it's got a 2-week free trial right now, so at
you
least
live
get on
close
there and
enough,
check it out.
Right?
What's that?
They live close enough to take it.
Yeah. You don't,
because it's online.
It's online. You just need access to internet. Anyways, 3 Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com, and your hosts today and your hosts traditionally are always Will Terry, Lee White, and I'm Jake Parker. You can find Lee White's work at leewhiteillustration.com. You can find Will Terry's work at willterry.com. And you can find my work at jakeparkerart.com. Podcast produced by Daniel 2. That's Daniel TU. And you can see more of his work at daniel2.co. Special thanks to Master of Production, David Bro, Keeper of the Curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, Chief Operations Officer, Lisa Fott, and a thank you to Lily Howell for our show notes. Now, go draw something.